Well, watch yourself right here. There's lots of ice.
I'm good.
Well, I may have been kids, but it's college. 13 years, they still do that.
No, no, Jason.
Went to school. So 13, grade 13.
Yeah. No. It's the landscape.
Watch that. Watch that ice.
Yeah. I would have thought
It's too close. Just
Hey, Marcy. Okay, so this is when you're this is for fair. And I'm gonna go.
I invited them. Gentlemen. Hands. You watch it in the footing as you come out. In this hour of sadness, we hear the voice of God, the voice of comfort, as we recite Psalm 23, first in Hebrew, and then together in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot desha yarbitseni, almei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech b'geit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorarai dishanta bashemen roshi kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai li'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He guideth me on the paths of righteousness. He restores my soul for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our Redeemer, 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go, you endure forever. We are always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life, trusting in your love and in your decisions. O Lord in heaven, strengthen those who mourn the loss of Martin Duffy Hatch. Help them to look beyond this moment, to realize that death can never destroy the bonds of everlasting love. Sustain them with the knowledge of our faith that you do not abandon souls to the grave, that you will not allow your faithful to suffer oblivion. For you, O Lord, have taught us the way of life. Through you, our refuge, we gain eternity. And let us say, Amen. We're here on this otherwise beautiful day to pay tribute to a wonderful human being. Not only has a family lost its father, grandfather, advisor, and patriarch, not only have nieces and nephews lost an uncle, a brother, not only has a synagogue lost one of its most treasured and dedicated members, but our entire community has lost a true prince of a man. A humble, quiet man of dignity, integrity, and selflessness, who throughout his entire life always sought ways to be in service to others. Duffy was a modest man of few words. He might very well be embarrassed and maybe even uncomfortable with our proceedings here on this otherwise beautiful morning, filled as they will be with words of praise, recollection, and love. As everyone who knew him well will certainly agree, the praise is well deserved. The recollections will be inspiring, and the love very real, very deep, and undying. In a vivid and memorable statement, our sages teach, Kol hamorid demaot al adam kasher, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sofran umenichan beveit gnuzav. Whatever tears are shed at the passing of an Adam kasher are so precious in the eyes of God that God counts each one of them and stores them all in a special vial on a special shelf in his treasure house. Our sages didn't use the word Adam Chashuv, important man, or Adam Gadol, a great man or a prominent man. They used the words Adam Kasher, an unusual phrase which is virtually untranslatable, because we know what kasher means when referring to food. But what does it mean when referring to a person? What sort of person did the sages have in mind when they said that even God mourns his passing? I believe that the sages had someone like Duffy Hatch in mind. Duffy Hatch was an Adam Kasher, a kosher person of integrity, a good man, a man who lived his entire life in the spirit of Judaism, a life of closeness to family, a life of service to those with whom he worked, to those with whom he bossed, if you want to call it that, and a life filled with reverence for God. This was Duffy. I'm thinking about the conversation that the family and I had last night in my office. And they talked about his humble beginnings in Pueblo. And when I was growing up, Pueblo was known for really only one thing. And I may be wrong about this, but whenever you wanted to mail away for a catalog or something, you always had to say, P.O. Box, whatever, Pueblo, Colorado. Like reading is fundamental, or whatever the effort was. Pueblo was the seat of all of that. No wonder he had to leave and come here to Denver, where he spent a good number of years with the absolute love of his life, Harleen. Their time together, they were perfect complements to each other. One was strong, person of many words, and the other was quiet, a little bit more of a follower, perhaps, a little behind the scenes. But that's perfectly okay. All the jobs that needed to get done got done within the context of their relationship. I came to know Duffy through my time here in the late 90s as a stalwart regular attendee at our synagogue every Shabbat morning, and someone who would come into the building for a volunteer opportunity. And of course, joined by other members of the BMH BJ choir that was formed by Cantor Joel Lichterman, the cantor emeritus of BMH BJ, someone with whom I worked very closely during my first stint here. Cantor Lichterman would like me to share a couple of thoughts that he composed for this occasion. He first says that he had never heard the name Duffy before. And he says he was bothered by that name because what kind of Jewish name is Duffy? David is usually David. Michael, Michael. What's the appropriate Hebrew equivalent for Duffy? As diplomatically as possible, I asked him whether Duffy was his real name. It's Martin, he replied, but no one calls me Martin. I shall call you Martin, I responded. I addressed him as Martin, but he rarely replied. So Duffy it was. He was among the very first volunteers to join that newly formed BMH-BJ men's choir and one of its most staunch devotees. Duffy was musical, possessed a pleasant singing voice, not a fluent music reader. He spent extra time studying his parts to become a reliable, consistent, and mainstay chorister. His attention to those kinds of details did not only mark his time in the choir, but I'm led to believe were part and parcel of his everyday living. Our expanding repertoire required formal organization and cataloging, something to which Duffy seemed ideally suited and eager to handle. He immediately offered to collate, organize, and maintain the 20 or so music files designated for each and every singer and occasion. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shabbat, Regalim, and special occasions. More than 100 files for each, without fault and for many, many years, checking and doubling down to ensure that every single page was clearly copied, marked, located, and filed as required. He volunteered countless hours, ensuring through his efforts that our many rehearsal hours would be as productive as possible. When music files fell into disarray, he promptly and patiently restored them to whatever degree necessary, out of genuine concern for all the singers. He cared deeply about our success and would diplomatically urge an occasional slacker to play with the team. He was indeed a model volunteer who, once committed to a cause or project, would see it through to the end. The qualities that almost all of us here know him by, that came to the fore in his work with the choir: devotion, loyalty, punctuality, setting and expecting high standards and genuine friendship, have been and will continue to be missed. Then he concludes, Elaine, our families and I wish Lori, Marcy, and their families strength and comfort in the days ahead. Duffy's legacy is truly a Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name. As indicated earlier, a number of people from the family are going to come forward and share remarks that either they have written or were written for them and have been asked to present. I'm going to ask them to come forward after Marcy speaks in any order that they choose. Please give them your attention. They'll introduce themselves as they come forward.
Thank you for being here today. My dad and I had a lot in common. I was told we always looked alike from when I was a child and even as an adult. I could never see it myself, but given how handsome my dad was, I took it as a compliment. We both had a sweet tooth. We both disliked cucumbers. What we both loved the most was lox and bagel. We could eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sometimes we did. Whenever I came home for a visit, he always made sure he had a double package of lox from Costco waiting in the fridge for me. He taught me that the key to the perfect lox and bagel was slicing the onion and tomato paper thin and always eating it open-faced. This way you got to eat twice the amount of lox. He was a smart man. My father would be happy to know that I have passed down our love of lox to Harper. I'm still working on Sloan. We both love grocery shopping. And if it was an Olympic sport, we would have won many medals. Our favorite store was Trader Joe's, not only for its unique products, but particularly for me because they don't have this chain in Canada. On every visit home, we would schedule an immediate trip there to pick up all of our favorite items, carefully going up and down each aisle, making sure not to miss anything. Whenever my dad came to visit me in Toronto, I would ask him to bring me my favorite snack of the freeze-dried mangoes, which he always did with pleasure. Over the years, he came to request his own treat that he would ask me to bring him from Toronto, a special bag of colorful licorice from a local grocery store. We both loved the Broncos. My dad taught me everything I know about football. Football was a big part of my upbringing here in Denver, and discussing the weekly Bronco games was a regular topic of conversation for us over the phone. Truth be told, there are not many people to discuss football with in Toronto unless you're a Bills fan. So feeling like I could share in the joy or pain of a Bronco game with my dad always made me feel connected to home. When my dad turned 50, he had a Bronco-themed birthday party, which many of you attended. There was a brief moment when I thought it would be cool to have a Broncos-themed 50th birthday party for myself to keep up the tradition. But then I remembered where I was. No one would have any Broncos clothing to wear. Not surprisingly, this idea was short-lived. My dad instilled a love of classical music. It was the only music he ever listened to in the car while we were driving. I guess it was inevitable. My dad instilled a love of our Jewish values and traditions, which we have carried on into our lives. Participating in the bat mitzvahs of his 3 granddaughters, 2 in Israel and 1 at his synagogue of over 50 years, was particularly meaningful to him. There are many things I admired about my dad. When my mom died, he had to learn to cook and clean and do laundry for himself. Truthfully, my dad kept our house cleaner than my mother ever did. Everything had its proper place. His closets were perfectly organized by category. Everything in his drawers was meticulously folded. His tools in the garage were perfectly placed on a pegboard, the shape of each outlined so you would know where to replace it after use. No crumb was ever left behind. After every meal in the kitchen, it was followed by a thorough sweep. This all came so naturally to him. His beautiful penmanship may have been an early sign of this strength. I admired his commitment to his health and exercise following his heart surgery when I was in high school. He woke up every morning at 5 a.m. to run before heading to work in Colorado Springs. Without fail, he was up every morning, no matter rain, snow, or shine, to make sure he got his daily exercise in as per the doctor's orders. Prior to my wedding, he also committed to losing weight and went on a strict diet. I admired his discipline as he tried to meet his goal, which he did. My dad maintained a healthy weight for most of his life, and I know he was proud of how he took care of himself. My dad did not often initiate things, but when given suggestions, he was always open to them. When I told him it would be nice to spend Passovers together as a family since we lived in different cities, he immediately booked a Passover cruise for us, an obvious choice. My dad never met a cruise he didn't like. This became our tradition for many years, and my dad planned everything on his own. He'd mail us a package with all the details of our flights and the cruise, and we would show up and meet the rest of the family. It could not have been easier, and it could not have been more fun. We have many wonderful memories of celebrating Passovers together in this way. Spending Thanksgivings together was also our tradition. One year I suggested it might be fun to spend the weekend at the Broadmoor after the holiday. My dad thought this was a great idea, and soon this too became one of our family traditions. Of course, the highlight of our time there was the famous Sunday brunch, which my dad and us all enjoyed tremendously. When we came to Denver to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday, we went back to the Broadmoor to once again enjoy the Sunday brunch as part of our celebrations. I think that brunch could have been his favorite culinary experience of all time. If you have not been, you should definitely go. It's a sight to see. My dad was very proud of his bottle collection, and those of you who have seen it would agree it is indeed worthy of praise. My dad was very proud of his lifelong ability to complete the daily crossword puzzle as his own father used to. I was always so impressed by his ability to do this and in a short time frame. As for me, I would sit with him and do the jumble puzzle while he worked on his clues. On occasion, he would ask me for help, but usually I was clueless. No pun intended. My dad was very proud of his time in the choir at his synagogue. Singing on the high holidays brought him a lot of joy. He had a beautiful voice, and he knew it. My dad was a devoted husband and father. He was very proud of our family and particularly of his three granddaughters, Harper, Sloan, and Lily, and all of their various accomplishments. He was proud of the life that I created with Jason in Toronto, while also being grateful to have Lori and Mike here with him in Denver, who were a tremendous support to him. My dad was also very proud of the many paintings he created over the years that hung in his house and in his assisted living residence. Just last week when I was visiting him, someone asked me if it would be okay to take a few pictures of his paintings to show someone. I said, of course. My dad loved knowing that his art was enjoyed by so many people. It was difficult seeing my dad decline over these last few years. I'm choosing to remember him for the vibrant man that he was and the man that we all knew. I wanted to share one last story. One summer, my dad came to visit us while spending time up at the lake. We asked him if he wanted to take the kayak out on the water. He said sure, and off he went, never having kayaked before. While having our own fun that day, we lost track of how long my dad had been gone. We started to worry that maybe he had gotten lost or something had happened to him. Should we go out and look for him? Just before the real panic set in, we spotted my dad from a distance making his way back to the dock. As we helped him in, he said, "Boy, was that fun." He had no idea he had been gone for over 3 hours. He had decided to cross the lake. He said, "It didn't seem that far at the time, and I was really enjoying myself." I think my dad loved the outdoors more than he knew and was always up for an adventure. I'm grateful to my sister for managing the care of my dad over these last years during his illness. I'm grateful to the nurses and the staff at Rosemark and the hospice team at Brighton for the kind and compassionate care my father received during his time at Rosemark. My dad lived a long, full life. He was deeply loved and will be greatly missed. He lived 25 years longer than my mother. It was a long wait, but now they are together, and I'm grateful he's no longer suffering. He was ready to go home.
Thank you all for coming. First of all, I read a letter from my parents who unfortunately are not doing well. So my mom wrote a letter, my father, with Duffy. We're very sorry that, I'll try to shorten it. My mom is a long writer. We're very sorry that we're not here present at honoring our Duffy. We want to thank you, Lori and family, Jason, Marcy, Harper, Sloan, Auntie Maureen, and all the beautiful cousins, family, and friends that are here and were part of Duffy's life. And we want to let you guys know how we feel and think of him. To begin, when Lori and Michael decided to get married, we moved to Colorado a year before them. Duffy, God bless him, instantly welcomed us and made us part of his Hatch family. And we used to call it the Hatch Family Plus. Always making us feel so comfortable and part of his life. He was only our in-law, but a very close and good friend, and confident, and we love that. We could always talk anytime. We're gonna have to start this new chapter without his beautiful smile and blue eyes. Sorry. We are so lucky that we were able to live within 10 minutes of him. When we were blessed with our Lily, we had heard years of Duffy speaking about Harper and Sloan, and we got to have hours of him talking about his granddaughters and how proud he was, and how if any of them walked in the room, he smiled and he turned his heart and melted it. We were so lucky to have our Papa Duff, and if you knew Papa Duff, you were not able to call him Grandpa. And if you called him Grandpa, he would actually get angry, and it was only Papa Duff. I think that was from his childhood. We enjoyed so many family moments and always included us caring and loving. Our Michael was so fortunate. Duffy and love between them was mutual and always there for each other, as Neil and I were. And he was so lucky to have Lori in his life with Marcy. Duffy was a wonderful man, a gentleman, loving friend, and always there for us and for all that knew him. We will always love him and miss him, especially little things like my Jewish accent or Polish accent. We would always joke around because my mother would say matzi and Duffy would say it was matzah, or chali and challah. It was an ongoing joke between East Coast and West Coast, I guess. Duffy will always be in our hearts, and we'll always have good memories we shared. The children, the family, all friends will miss you dearly. Love, Shirley and Neil. When Rabbi Chai brought us in, he asked us to think of some stories. I knew Marcy was going to catch a lot, and Lily wrote a lot. I tried to think of a couple stories that Duffy and I joked around about over the years, and two of them were, the first time I met Duffy, Lori told me that my father's tough and he's going to test you, and he's just not going to talk, and he's not going to show a lot of emotion. And it just happened to be the first time that he came out, there was a Broncos game, which everyone knows he likes the Broncos. And Lori was too afraid to tell her father that we had just moved in together. I happened to still have my condo, and we got excited. We bought everything for the game. Duffy showed up, and the game started, and they were losing. And like most Bronco fans, you're doing a lot of yelling and screaming and swearing or whatever else you do. Duffy just sat there with his hands folded on his lap, not saying a word. And we're about halftime. I finally looked at Lori and I was like, is he going to say a single word? I'm like, the team is doing horrible. And she just looks at me and goes, I've never seen this in my whole life. And I said, you know what? I'm going to leave. You can tell your father that I live with you. And I'm going to go home for the night to my place. I literally walked out the door. Lori lived on the third story condo. And I made it down 15 steps, and you heard every four-letter word and everything that a Broncos fan would say when the team is losing. And as I'm walking out the door, I could hear him from up 3 stories down yelling at the TV. So I said, that's interesting. And then the second one was when we came here, Duffy wanted to start to show me around Colorado. And he goes, oh, do you like Coors? I said, I like Coors Light. He goes, let's go to the Coors factory. And as we're driving, he was driving, he said, just let you know, I really don't drink too much anymore. I said, never thought you did. So we got there, we did the tour. Lori and I just got engaged, and we told the host that was walking us around, and at the bottom of Coors, they'll give you samples. And Duffy said, they just got engaged, we should give them extra drinks. They literally locked the door, and they said, and it was actually another couple that happened to just get engaged. And they said, you can stay here as long as you want and drink as much as you want. And probably about an hour or 2 hours later, Duffy handed me the keys and goes, you're driving home. I can't see, but can we stop for pizza on the way? I said, okay, Duffy's kind of showing his colors a little bit. I can just say he was a great man.
I never thought I would have to stand here and say goodbye to my Papa Duff. It doesn't feel real, like any minute he's gonna walk through the door with his warm smile, his bright blue eyes, and his endless kindness. But here I am, trying to put into words how much he meant to me. Papa Duff was more than a grandfather. He was a gentleman, a friend, and a safe place. I was always jealous of his blue eyes and how they seemed to hold the whole sky. They were full of life, of wisdom, and stories he'd tell over and over again, just because he loved making people laugh. I look into them and wonder if mine would ever hold that same kind of light. And now when I close my eyes, I hear his favorite song, The Rose by Betty Midler. I hear the lyrics, and I think of him, of how he carried love in everything he did, how he believed in kindness and patience and never giving up on the people he loved. The song will always be a song to me. It'll be him. Every note, every word, and will remind me of his strength, his love, and his gentle heart. The last time I saw him, it broke me. It wasn't fair, and it wasn't him. Not the way I wanted to remember him. But I won't let that be my last memory of him. No, I remember the man who made me laugh until I cried, the man who had time for me, who made everyone feel special who made everyone feel special just by being himself. The gentleman, the protector, the man who loved us all so deeply. Papa Duff, I'll miss you forever, and I'll carry you with me in every song, every memory, and every time I wish I could see those blue eyes just one more time. Thank you for everything. I love you.
In just a moment, we're going to lower the casket. But just before we do that, I just would like to put everything into just a very brief context. And some of you may have heard this before, but you should know I only say it when it's absolutely true. It's very clear from everyone who's here today and from the people we've heard from, the members of his family, that as he was quiet and unassuming, he exerted an unbelievable hold and influence and inspiration to his family. And I often, at times like this, and for people like this, think of someone I consider one of the great sages of our day, Tyler Perry, who considered categorizing people in his own life with the analogy of a tree. And he said some people are like leaves. And you know what a leaf is. There are very few on a tree right now because the season has changed, the wind has come, and the leaf blows away. That's what leaves do. And there are people like that. The slightest little disruption happens and they retreat. They go elsewhere. Can't blame them. It's the way they are. Then you have people who are like branches, a little stronger. They may remain connected to the tree, but if you venture out too far, put too much weight on them, they may also break and perhaps not be as useful as you might otherwise want. But then you have roots. And if you think of the roots of a tree, you see they're usually not seen. They're below the ground. And roots have one purpose. They support and hold up the branches and the leaves. By not being seen, which was Duffy, that's the symbol of his influence and the symbol of his strength. And Tyler Perry asks each of us to consider who are the leaves, the branches, and the roots in our own lives, and what are we in the lives of others. Always strive to be the root for other people. Among the many things that Duffy modeled and taught, that was certainly one of the ones that he didn't talk about, but his life just exemplified and embodied that idea. He was the family root. He was the patriarch. He was the anchor. And what a way to be remembered. After an 85-year journey here on earth, Duffy Hatch has returned to his maker. May his soul ever be bound up in the bond of life. Tehei nishmato tzurura b'tzara chayim. May he ever rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. In Israel, ancient times, the article of clothing would be torn as a sign of grief. If you think back then, people didn't have wardrobes or multiple vestments to wear. The tearing of a piece of clothing was quite an investment, and it was seen as a cathartic act. So we're going to symbolically recreate that with the tearing of the ribbon. We're going to make a blessing together, Marcy, Lori, and I, and everyone will answer Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the world, to be believed to be a righteous judge and a judge of righteousness. Yashov Echad Haaretz Yeshaya, Ruach Tashuv El Elohim Asher Natzah. Dust returns to the earth as it was. Spirit returns unto God. Family is taking the opportunity to perform chesed shel emet, altruistic kindness, by doing something for their loved one with no expectation that that person will do it for them. And we're all going to have an opportunity to do that after the family does what they do. Anyone who wishes to put some earth into Duffy's final resting place may come forward.
Right after. And it was shortly after Michael and Lloyd. I was after that.
How they relate.
I know. I am. Wow. Yeah, no. Yeah.
We lived there really long. Maybe my family, it's her decision. She'll decide. Yeah. Yeah. This is my older How have you been with your
Oh, he's on the other side. I remember not being
Almost 60.
Hatsur Tsamim Palo Kichod Rachav Mishpat El Emunah Ve'ein Abel Tzadik V'Yashar Hu Hatsur Tsamim B'chol Polal B'chol Yomer Lamati Pal Hashalit U'Matzah U'Ma'al Me'vit U'Machayem Ma'orid Morid She'ol V'Yachar
I knew him.
Tzadik B'chod Rachav Hatsur Tsamim Erech HaPayim Amalei Rachamim Chamon Avachus Na'avot U'Banim Kilacha Adon Haslichot Harachim Azam in Ben Shana Yiyah Elef Shani Yechiyah Vayitron Lo Hayah Baruch Dayan Ha'emet Ve'emit U'Mechayah Yadzanu Adonai Ki Tzedek Mishpatecha Tzedek B'Dovrecha Tzizkeh B'Shavtecha Yein Laharher Archar Midat Shavtecha Tzadik Ata Adonai V'Yashar Mishpatecha Dayan Emet Shofet Tzedek V'Emet Baruch Dayan Ha'emet Shekol Mishpatav Tzedek V'Emet Nefesh Kol Chai B'Yadecha Tzedek Mala Yiminecha Rachem Al Pleitat Son Yadecha V'Tomar Lamalach Heref Yadecha Adonai Natan V'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach V'hu Rachum Yechaper Avon V'lo Yashchit Miherba Liyashiv Apo V'lo Ya'ir Kol Chamato Adonai Yoshia. We're going to ask Marcy and Lori to rise for the words of the mourner's Kaddish, the first Kaddish for Duffy. Their job is to say the Kaddish. Our job is to propel the impact and the influence of the words of the Kaddish out into the universe by answering Amen and Yehei Shmei Rabbah at the appropriate time. Yid Kada, Yid Kada, Shmei Rabbah, Amen. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah, Tevarach Leolam Leolam Yitbarach V'Yishtabach Yitbarach Barichu Le'ela Mikol Berchata V'Shirata Zushbachata V'Nechamata Ta'amiran B'Yalma V'Imru Amen Yehei Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'Chayim Aleinu V'Yal Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. El malei rachamim shocheinu v'amromim. Ametzei menachanachana tachat kanfei hashchina. B'malot kadoshim u'tohorim. K'zohar ha'kiyam et nishmat. Reb Mordechai Yitzchak ben Meir v'Leah shehalach liolama began Eden tehei menuchata. Ana Baal harachamim astireha b'seter kanafecha liolamim. Utzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom amishkavo v'nomar amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Mordechai Yitzchak, the son of Meir and Leah, who now rests in his eternal home. We beseech you to remember the many worthy and righteous deeds he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be ever bound up in the bond of life. May he ever rest in peace. And we all say, Amen. Amen. Before we have the final ceremony of those who are not mourning, forming a double line so that the family in mourning can walk through, as we'll say a couple of words repeated after me. Family wants people to know that there is going to be a period of Shiva that's going to start at 2:00 this afternoon. 2:00 this afternoon at what was Duffy's residence, 6831 East Center Avenue in Denver. It says here visitation is from 2 to 5. There'll be a mincha minyan, a mincha and Ma'ariv minyan at 5:00. And then visitation will continue, or will pause and then continue from 7 to 9. That is also going to be similar schedule on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Visitation will start from 10 to noon, a break, and then 2 to 5. Mincha and Ma'ariv will conclude that part of the visitation day. And then once again, from 7 to 9. The family does ask that we respect those times. It gives them a chance to eat and to do what they need to do. And on Friday morning, there's visitation only from 10 to 12. Shabbat, after Shabbat, from 7 to 9. And Sunday morning, which is when Shiva ends, 10 to 12. Your presence at the minyanim we're having, and just to visit would be a source of comfort and a fitting tribute to Duffy's memory. We'll ask those not in mourning to form a double line. I'll just wait for a cue. What direction should that be?
Say this way.
Okay.
2 lines this way.
Some people are going to face that way, others will face that way. Everyone is going to repeat these words after me as you make your way to your cars. Hamakom, Yenachem, Etchem, B'toch, Sha'ar, Avelei, Sion, Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all who mourn, Zion and for Jerusalem. And we all say, Amen. The family walks through, you may return to your cars.
Aggie grew up with you.
living here for the next year. Lucky for me. She's good. I was on FaceTime. But not a hug, just fix it up. Duffy and this is Jacobs. It's great to see you. I gotta talk about school right now. My school gives me a lot of work, so I gotta get on. That's what I thought too. Stacey.
Yes. Like in the night, I'm trying to think of a halfway point between you guys and me. We should go downstairs. All right.
Thank you all for your virtual attendance.